Back in 1994, when Forrest Gump was busy running around the country, when these friends first officially became friends, and when everybody could feel the love tonight cause it is where we are, Squaresoft released a little RPG on the Super Famicom called Live Alive. On release, it was met with disappointing sales when compared to the Final Fantasy series. Square's localization member Ted Woolsey also stated that an overseas release would be unlikely due to its low graphical quality. And that was it. Live Alive remained in Japan, never to officially venture out to the rest of the world. Until 2022, that is, where Live Alive was finally remade in that pretty HD 2D style that we all love. This game is a very different kind of RPG. It's basically a collection of completely unrelated short stories that are each lovable in their own way. For those of you who are fans of 16-bit era RPGs and want to experience something fresh, then Live Alive is definitely worth a look. Before we get into this review, it would help me out a lot if you hit the like button and subbed for more RPG content coming soon. Alright, let's get into it. We'll start by taking a moment to admire the beauty that is HD 2D. These visuals look amazing. I don't think I'll ever get sick of this style. They somehow take me back to my carefree life as a kid while reminding me that I'm a middle-aged guy with a million commitments all at the same time. This kind of reflects how each of the Live Alive stories is set in a different time period. How is that for meta? The soundtrack is just as incredible. Original composer Yoko Shimomura makes a return to re-orchestrate the entire soundtrack, and it sounds sensational. These tracks reflect each of the different time periods, from the Asian-inspired tracks from Edo, Japan to the woodwind instruments you would expect from a western. There are also some absolute banger battle themes, with the main boss battle theme being my favourite. It is incredibly catchy and literally brought a smile to my face every time it played. The voice work is also great. Most of Live Alive's chapters are light-hearted fun set in different countries, and the voice acting reflects this perfectly in the delivery and the characters' accents. If there is one criticism I have with the quality of this remake, it is with the load screens. Every time you enter a new area, a loading screen with a gameplay tip will pop up for a few seconds. This not only disrupts the flow of gameplay, but most of the time the tip isn't even on screen long enough to read. Live Alive features 7 different character stories at the start of the game that you can select in any order. Each of these focuses on a different main character in a different time period. These stories are all short and sweet, taking roughly between 30 minutes and 4 hours to complete. What I loved is how different each of these chapters are from one another. They all offer something unique with differing genres, structures, and gameplay mechanics. It is very likely that your favourite chapters will be different to mine. Also, because they are unrelated, it really doesn't matter which one you play first or the order in which you play them in. Once these 7 chapters are complete, there are some additional chapters, one of which finally brings all of the characters together. To give you an idea of what Live Alive is about, I'll briefly break down what you can expect from the initial 7 chapters. We'll start in Edo, Japan, where you play as a shinobi sent to infiltrate an enemy stronghold and rescue a prisoner. The story is really light here, with a focus on combat and exploration. This environment is massive, with optional areas and multiple paths that you can work through, making it quite easy to get lost. What I really loved about this chapter is that you can play through it in multiple ways. Firstly, you can kill everyone, which means you'll be hunting high and low, trying to take the life of every single enemy. Then there's the pacifist run, where you have to use the super simple stealth mechanics and avoid killing anyone up until the final boss. These two extremes do offer their own unique rewards, however I was happy playing somewhere in between. This flexibility gives Edo, Japan more replayability than any of the other chapters, and personally this was one of my favourite experiences. Next, we have The Distant Future, which is essentially a story-driven space opera inspired by a bunch of different sci-fi films. You play the role of Cube, a small robot created by another passenger on the ship. The pacing here is slow, with a lot of walking around the spaceship, reaching destination after destination and watching the scenes unfold. This is also the only chapter with no required combat whatsoever. There is an optional game console that you can play, but that doesn't really count. Despite its slow pacing and lack of combat, there are some really good moments here, and this chapter would definitely be enjoyed by those who like a good story. The present day chapter is easily the shortest of them all, and it only took me a half an hour. Masaru Takahara is on a journey to be the best fighter in the world and will have to defeat other great fighters around the world to achieve his goal. Through a menu, you can select the order of opponents to take on, with the opportunity to learn their battle skills if they use them on you in combat. There is no leveling up or equipment here, so baiting enemies to use specific moves, which you will then learn, is the only way to get stronger for future fights. This story is short and sweet and clearly pays homage to the Street Fighter games. Unfortunately, I would have liked a bit more out of this one. The idea was pretty cool, but it just felt way too short. In the prehistoric era, you played the role of a caveman before language was ever a thing, yet they still had motorized stone cars. I still don't understand that one. This story unfolds through voice grunts, sprite animations, and emotive symbols, and this was a really unique way to present the narrative. Some unique mechanics this time around include item combination, as well as sniffing your enemies out using your acute sense of smell. It's often the little things that make Live Alive so good, and a great example of this is within this chapter's item descriptions. A stick, for instance, is described as stick is stick, and a rock is rock. This era offers a bit of everything, and it should be commended for the creative way that the story is told. The Wild West chapter is another short but sweet story with some beautiful scenery. As you would expect, you play the role of a cowboy who soon gets caught up in a conflict between a small town and an outlaw gang. Essentially, you need to help defend the town from an incoming attack. This one really feels like you're playing through an old western film, and I think this would be a great starting point if you haven't played any of the other chapters. I had a lot of fun here, but I would have liked a little bit more in terms of length and depth. In the near future, we have Akira's chapter, and this one has it all. Storytelling, exploration, dungeon crawling, and grinding. Akira is a psychic orphan residing in the town's orphanage, but soon uncovers a huge conspiracy surrounding the disappearance of the town's citizens. This one has Japanese anime written all over it, most evident from the giant robots. The near future is one of the more lengthy chapters and was also one of my favorites, as it gives you a taste of everything. Finally, we have Imperial China. Here, you play the role of a Shifu, who is an old martial arts master who has learned everything there is to know about his art. Now, his only desire is to find a student so his legacy can live on. This one has a focus on storytelling, but there's also quite a lot of repetitive combat through training your students and taking on enemy after enemy. Despite this, the story here was one of my favorites, and I feel like China gives a really good representation of what Live Alive is all about. One of the best things about this game is that each chapter is so different. There truly is something for everyone. And while I did find some enjoyment in every one of them, I do feel that some were too short and could have done with some more depth. In an otherwise excellent game, this was the one major area of improvement for me. As I mentioned before, each chapter's approach to combat is different. One has no required combat whatsoever, some don't allow you to level up, and some have a huge focus on grinding and dungeon crawling. Regardless of which chapter you choose, the combat's fundamentals will be the same. Your characters and the enemies are placed on a 7x7 grid, and they each have their own action gauge. This gauge will increase for both enemies and allies whenever you initiate movement around the field. If you stay completely still, nothing will happen. If you move around repeatedly without attacking, the enemy will hit many times, provided you're within their range. The key strategy of this system is to be in the right spot at the right time. If you're out of the enemy's range when it's their turn, their gauge will reset, giving you the opportunity to jump in for an attack. Timing your attacks and knowing the range of your enemy's most deadly abilities is the key to victory. That's really all there is to it. The more abilities your characters learn, the more options you have in battle in terms of range, hitting an enemy's weakness, and inflicting status abnormalities. With the basic understanding of this combat, you shouldn't encounter too many problems in terms of difficulty. There is the odd difficult battle here and there, but for the most part, the main chapters are fairly easy to get through. The character upgrade mechanics are also very simple. Aside from equipment, leveling up to increase stats and learn new abilities is all you'll be doing. There are a couple of minor exceptions here with certain chapters, but if you're after some deep upgrade mechanics, you will be disappointed. However, this isn't really the sort of game that needs them. The chapters are short and sweet, and the mechanics in place do exactly what they need to do. Better late than never is what I say. It may have taken nearly 30 years for an official localization, but at least now we can all experience this very unique old school JRPG. There is something for everyone here. Each chapter is just so different, and this keeps the game fresh through the 20 to 30 hour journey. This remake also looks beautiful in all its HD 2D glory, with an impressive range of tracks composed to reflect the many time periods and genres. My only criticism here is that the quality of these chapters are all over the place. Some are very short and shallow, and this left me wanting more. Live Alive is a very simple yet solid JRPG experience, and for what it sets out to do, it does a damn good job. I highly recommend playing this game if you're into RPGs of this era. Have you played Live Alive yet? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit like and sub for more RPG content coming soon. See you next time.